I am Coach Chidinma, and today we're getting into a conversation that a lot of people in coaching quietly avoid. How do you actually know coaching is working? Coaching takes time, requires trust, and it requires also real investment, right? From the coach, from the leader, and often the organization. The organization is footing the bill. They are, putting aside a significant amount of budget and investing this in leaders who are supposed to be coached. But very few people stop to ask, what does it working actually look like? When you say a coaching conversation, a coaching engagement has been successful, what does that look like? Today, we're unpacking that from three angles. We're going to look at this from the perspective of the coach, from the perspective of the leader being coached, and also from the perspective of the organization who is putting forward and putting aside the budget. And to do justice to this, we have Coach Gloria Hauwa Coach Gigi. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get into the crux of today's conversation, could you please introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Gloria Hauwa Gbemudu, and I am an executive and leadership coach. And my organization is Mark Owens Coaching and Leadership.
Great to meet you, Coach Gloria.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. To get into today's question, the first we'll start with as a coach, right? You're a coach, and so we're going to look at that first from that lens. For you, how do you personally measure whether your coaching engagements are creating real lasting impact in the leaders that you're working with?
Oh, thank you for that question. Well, for me, measuring whether coaching is working starts from the very beginning of the engagement, not only at the end. At the start, I like to get very clear on what the client wants to shift. Sometimes it could be behavior, sometimes it's mindset, sometimes it's how they're showing up in leadership conversations, in decision making, in confidence, boundaries, etc. But one simple, powerful tool I use is scaling. It may sound very small, but at the beginning of a session, I may ask a client, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you now on this issue? Then we explore what that number means. Why are you at that number? And what would success look like? And what would need to shift for you to move even 1 or 2 points forward? And at the end of the session, we check again. What has changed? What are you now seeing differently? And what action are you willing to take? So over the course of the engagement, those small shifts begin to tell a story. Then maybe I would say 2 other things that I use. I use end of engagement surveys to gauge impact. I use testimonials, client reflections, and sometimes stakeholder feedback where that is appropriate. Now, one indicator that maybe people may overlook is when clients keep showing up, when they do the work in between the sessions and sometimes come back later, even, to be coached on a different issue or on a new level of growth. So for me, coaching is working when the client is not just having insight within the session, but making different choices outside the session. And others actually see the change and testify to the change. Thank you.
So it starts within the session when they move from where they are to where they want to be at the end of the session. And also it expands to, I think from what I hear you say, it has to be sustainable, which is, it goes from within the session, outside of the session, and finally that other people can really just attest to the change that has taken place. That's really great. So to then flip the lens, I think a first question, they would always say every coach needs a coach, right? So you have undergone coaching before, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. And as a leader or, an executive who has been coached, or if you sponsor coaching, so you can answer this from either of the lens, what does meaningful impact actually look like for you? And, how do you know it's been achieved?
Okay. For me, as the person being coached, impact may it may look different, right? It could be greater self-awareness. It could be that I've gotten more emotional regulation, clearer communication, maybe stronger decision-making skills, or even more confidence, in difficult conversations. That's for me who is being coached, right? Looking at the areas or where I want to focus. But for the organization, it also has to show up in how that leader performs, how that leader relates, influences, and leads others. So meaningful impact is not only did I, as the leader, enjoy coaching. Enjoyment is good, but it's not enough. The bigger question is what has changed? So, is the leader from the organizational lens having conversations maybe that they used to avoid? Or maybe are they delegating better? Are they managing pressure differently? Are they more intentional with their team? And are other people experiencing them differently? Sometimes the change may be very subtle. Maybe the leader is pausing before reacting where they would have really overblown things, or maybe they listen more deeply, or they stop trying to prove themselves and start leading from a more grounded place. So over time, these shifts begin to show up in visible behavior, like I said the first time. So for me, meaningful impact is being achieved when that leader or individual, where appropriate, the organization can point to observable shifts that matter to that leader's role, that leader's goal, and that leader's context.
Mhm. So, meaningful impact in coaching from a leader's point of view is the shifts, and
Yes,
not just any shifts, but observable shifts. Great.
100%.
So now we're going to move into the final part of today's question, which would
Mm,
be the organization. Now, we hear a lot of organizations sort of speak to, I think that's still a great area, ROI, ROE. How do I know
mhm,
this has worked? So beyond, like you said, the feel good of the
mhm,
employees or the leader who just, went through the coaching engagement, as an organization who have been convinced to say, we need X amount of money to, sponsor a leader into this.
mhm.
What organization, what frameworks, what practices should organizations actually put in place for them to be able to evaluate their return on investment when they go through a coaching engagement?
Okay. I would imagine that the first practice should be clarity. So organizations need to be clear on why are they investing in coaching for anybody. They need to be clear on what the desired outcomes are. What is it about? Right? What is the transition, or is it performance? Is it confidence? So why are we investing in this leader? Let's really be clear. The first framework for me is clarity. Then next, I would say alignment, right? The organization, the coach, and the coachee should have a shared understanding of what the goals of the engagement are, while still protecting confidentiality, because you don't want to get into the space of the coachee, right? So there should be alignment on this is the goal that we are trying to achieve as an organization, and there should be an agreement between the coach, the coachee, and the organization. So that balance is very, very important. Now, and then I would say that the third could include something like, all right, what are we reflecting on before the coaching engagement and after the coaching engagement? So what are the reflections? What are the assessments? What would be the feedback? What are the pulse checks during that engagement, and end of engagement reviews? And so, where possible, organizations can look at behavioral indicators. For example, the quality conversations, team engagement, retention, performance, stakeholder relationships, or readiness for expanded responsibility. Yeah. And so most of the powerful returns that I have seen with organizations is that their employees have better judgment, stronger relationships, increased self-trust. So that framework should measure both tangible and the human shifts that make those outcomes sustainable.
Hmm. So you started from clarity and then
Yeah.
alignment, and then finally being able to have indicators that are measurable. And I think one thing that is critical is where you measure the tangible and the human elements, because sometimes we're looking for the big shifts in, our books. How have we moved from X% to X%? But it could also be, like you said earlier in the conversation, pausing or just relating better. And these things, while they may look like it's not really impacting the budget, but it's at least supporting the individual to show up better at work. And when you show up better at work, there's team cohesion, there's better alignment, there's better workflow. And this ultimately impacts the bottom line because, there's value for the individual, for the team, and most importantly, value for the organization. But Gigi, this has been such a grounded, practical conversation. But just before we wrap up, I would just like you to share one thought. So if you could say in one sentence, organizations that are investing in coaching but haven't exactly thought about how to measure it, what is, just to put all that you said in one sentence. So an organization wants to invest in coaching, but you're really like, how do I measure it? It is one thing you tell them to do.
Okay. So I would say be clear. Organizations, be clear from the beginning about what change you are hoping to see. Because I would say that if you do not define it, then you cannot recognize it when it happens.
If you do not define it, you cannot recognize it when it happens. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Coach Gloria Gbemudu today on Leadership Conversation Series, and we have explored how to really know when coaching is working. And so everyone watching, if this has made you sort of think about the coaching, the impact of coaching in another dimension, I'd encourage you to share this video and share this YouTube link with anyone who you think needs to see this. Until next time, bye for now.
Bye-bye.